Good afternoon. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. I am Edward Amara, FOL West African correspondent. Once more, welcome to Roundtable Africa. Here we discuss everything African. We bring you latest developments on the continent. We discuss news that affects happening, and also we try to give you close quality information that will give you the ample opportunity to take decisive decision on the continent that we call our home. We all know Africa is a virgin land, as some people call it, a land full of young, energetic people. We all know humans are also resources. Fortunately for Africa, we have the available human resources, but each usability maybe is one that is questionable. With all the natural resources that we have, we still keep having series of problems, be it economical, political, health. In fact, Africa is just in a combat of problems. So welcome to Focus on Liberia with me, Edward Amara. I am FOL West African correspondent based in Kenema City, Freetown, or Kenema City, Sierra Leone, West Africa. Today we basically have three major headlines that we are definitely going to discuss. One is the USA first and ever female vice president trip to Africa. Can she or will her visit actually woo the continent from China and Russia invasion? So we deep down into that, and we also look at Emmanuel Macron's visit also to Africa in a bid to counter Russia constant presence on the continent is also very, very important. And finally, we look at the headline, Russia invasion of Ukraine still continuing to divide Africa. Why? We also have to look into that. So welcome, feel free to participate, make your meaningful contribution, Binance, and I will loudly and clearly read those contributions. So let's see. Kamala Harris visit to Africa. Can or will her visit prevent both China and Russia coming into Africa? Some of who did history in universities, I think it just gave me a clear picture of what happened in the 1900s when the struggle for partition of Africa took place. Here you have the Berlin Conference, where you have the German Chancellor, Bismarck, and others who carefully meet to discuss on how to discuss Africa, and they divided the continent among themselves because of selfish and scrupulous reason. And they gave some maybe flimsy excuses why they decided to invade Africa. Some claim that they decided to colonize Africa because of religious reason. Some said because of political reason. Some said it is because to civilize Africa. Why others still claim that it was because of economic reasons. That Africa, everything in Africa by then, when you watch at it, everything African was termed to be like evil, rubbish, not too good. And they think that Africa was not civilized, Africa was not democratic. But I think the backbone beyond the invasion or the division of Africa, the scramble for partition of Africa that took place in the 1900s was actually on economic reason. It was neither for any, maybe political was associated, or politics normally take the tune of economy. It was neither to even civilize Africa. If they are not so, they wouldn't have just come and introduced what I call essential education, how to read and write, and all of those education being introduced on the continent by our colonial powers. We are only serval education, essential education, because when you write numbers for them to calculate their money, if you're able to read and write, so interpret the white man's language. So all what they did was actually just meant to do for their own selfish and unscrupulous reason. It was neither to civilize Africa, it was neither to educate to it was never to make up, because we are all religious. Our ATRA is so strong to understand that it involves spirituality, and ATRA is quite different from Satanism or anything that you call evil. So let's come. We are going to see Kamala Harris visit to Africa. Will her presence on the continent deter the coming of Russia and China, who are arguably existing on the continent? In various countries, wherever you go, you must hear the Chinese sentiment. So let's see. It was first. Let's see first. Since in 2000, a lot of things have actually been taken place into Africa, but everything heightened when the like of Donald Trump took over power in 2016. You all know how controversial, unpredictable, and unscrupulous Donald Trump has been. He was very unpredictable even with the United States itself. So I think because of Donald Trump's assumption of office in 2016, a lot of things happened actually into the USA. The USA lost some amount of our grip on the continent, and you saw the like of China and Russia, even India, Turkey. They became a bit active into on the continent, because the USA mentality, when Donald Trump came, he said want to make America more strong, making America a bit selfish, unscrupulous, and the wordings on Africa, we are never friendly. So some of the continent leaders, we are aggrieved, and China and Russia used that as an excuse, and they took it to their own advantage, and they managed to maximize some of their powers on the continent. And today we have seen the USA pull out a lot of things. Thank God, with the coming of Joe Biden, I think the USA have returned to the control of some of the things that Donald Trump used his veto power to take them out. Now we are seeing the Democrat Party leading in the USA. Since then, since the assumption of the office of the United States presidential office by Joe Biden, we have seen the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken actually visited. Now we have also seen Kamala Harris, the Vice President, who is visiting Africa for 9-day trip. She will start her visit to Ghana, Tanzania, and finally in the Zambia. Then in December, we are expecting to see Joe Biden himself coming for the USA African Summit. But what is actually behind their visit, and what is the necessity of having top United States officers coming on the continent? The USA need to deepen. One of the main reasons is that it needs to deepen its engagement with the continent, because United States for far too long have had a good maybe collaboration on the continent, especially with leaders, and with that it has managed to maximize her power on the continent, exploited it. But Africa is now waking from her shambles, and it used to be into slumber. I think we don't want to be kept into certain limbo. So we are now seeing a lot of African leaders with revolutionary mentality who are coming on the continent, who attitudes have been well spotted and willing actually to break that kind of perfect unscrupulous union with the I'm using the word perfect and very unscrupulous because I want to contradict those two things, because maybe you can watch at it was perfect, when you watch at it deep down it was very unscrupulous. So I'm using those things to contradict what exactly people think that the United States relationship of Africa used to be. So I think it needs to deepen its relationship with the continent to ensure that maybe she doesn't lose almost everything that they have so unscrupulously work for to maintain the relationship. Then another reason is that the competition from global powers like China and Russia, presence on the continent. The United States have deemed it necessary to ensure that she still continuing to maintain her power, maybe still portray herself as the most reliable partner on the continent. And in a subversive move to present both China and Russia having some amount of grip on the continent, I think she thinks that, okay, it's better I come in and do so. Okay, Kamala Harris is coming to do a 9-day visit on the continent. And she will start in 3 days. Today she is in Ghana. She just landed in Ghana. So from there she will be going to Tanzania. And after that, she will be heading to Zambia. We all know before this time, in fact, in Tanzania, she will have the opportunity to meet the Vice President, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan. Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, the first female president of Tanzania. After the fall of John Magufuli, he used to be one of my most respected and beloved leaders on the continent. His revolutionary mentality was well spotted on, and his attempt to maybe face Tanzania on a different path, or put Tanzania on a different trajectory, and also question the Western mentality on the country, and refuse to even honor some IMF loan, doing away with independence celebration, being a forerunner to do almost everything, sacking of some amount of corrupt teachers, government officers. He fight. I think he saw, but the United States and other Western powers saw him like a threat to their invasion on the continent, and they tainted his reputation. The only thing, he also developed some amount of dictatorial tendency, in which he prevented some opposition leaders. Some of them he threw in prison, or he threw them in prison. Some he used his political power to also pay their charges or bill or court fines to ensure that they have been released. Finally, because of his controversial mentality, I think he and the like of Pierre Nkurunziza, who was in Burundi, and all of them fell to the COVID-19, made their soul rest in perfect peace. They were Africa, especially John Magufuli was an African hero. Unlike Pierre Nkurunziza, who manipulated the constitution, maybe he was almost about to ignite another war between the Houthis and the Tutsis in Tanzania, in Burundi. So we are seeing Kamala Harris will have that opportunity to discuss with another female, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, the current president of Tanzania, who we should have the opportunity to discuss with her. So that is why Kamala Harris is there. So let's see. Actually, when Blinken came on the continent, he had a mission. He visited places like Niger in West Africa. The capital city of Niger is Niamey. And he also went in Ethiopia. For two main reasons. In Ethiopia, he condemned almost everything that happened into Ethiopia. Maybe blamed the president, the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and even said they deserve to be indicted by the ICC because they committed war crime in regions like the Tigray region, where the Amhara, Afar, and other regions, they had series of clashes with the Ethiopian National Army in Mekele, that is the capital city of the Tigray. A lot of atrocity took place over there, and especially Eritrea was also deeply involved into the war. In Asmara has also been deeply condemned because of her involvement into the war. So Anthony Blinken visit on the continent was because of security. And he visited Niger. Niger is also facing another crisis. I think in some part of 2020, there was an attempted coup in Niger, but the president survived it. And it is now facing war from the ISIL, especially the Boko Haram activities into Nigeria. And the country is one of the poorest on the continent. So he visited there to ensure that he forestalled peace and unity. And that was why he came. He came actually for security reasons. But Harris' visit on the continent is based on the economic reason. That is why she had decided to visit Tanzania, Ghana, and Zambia. Like in Ghana, Ghana is facing an inflation rate of 50% inflation rate. Then before this time, we have Ken Aforo Atata. That is the finance minister of Ghana, who visited Beijing, China, in an attempt to help. He wants the Chinese government maybe to facilitate IMF bailout, and also to take loan, so that Ghana is now facing. Ghana used to be one of the prosperous economy on the continent, especially for West Africa. Unfortunately, since the havoc of COVID-19, inflation rate into Ghana is now 50%, and the country have been facing a demonstration. You have like hashtag fix Ghana economy. A lot of things that country have actually come on a series of demonstration. And in places like Zambia, the copper is no longer being highly produced into Tanzania. And seeing Hichilema government, it has in a lot of our confrontation have been faced by the new man in power after Igalugu left the government, plundered the economy plunder. So we have a lot of other things. So Kamala Harris has decided now to visit these three countries to ensure that maybe she help in the economy, on the economy background. But and also she also want to see peaceful transfer of power. Peaceful transfer of power, the democratic transition of power from one state to another. So that is why she's visited. And people are even saying that the United States have a summit, a USA African summit in December. So her visit will also be like to prepare a ground for the coming of Joe Biden on the continent, when the United States will be having a summit with Africa, just like what happened when China had a summit with African leaders. So we are now seeing Africa need to be very careful. Even like it is just like excuse me, a newly matured woman will have a lot of suitors. I think we have a continent with dynamic talent and lot of natural resources. If our leaders are not very careful, they may end up getting ties with certain people that we do not deserve to have. So let's see, we have the natural resources, then the population is so young, and we are seeing these people coming on the continent to visit us. So when Joe Biden, Blinken visited, he focused on the security, and most preferably visited Ethiopia and Niger. Niger is in West Africa, Ethiopia is in the Horn of Africa, or in East Africa. So Harry is visiting to see that her peaceful transition of power can be done, and she also watching at the economy. That is why she decided to visit places like Tanzania, Ghana. Tanzania is also in East Africa. Ghana is in the west. Maybe Zambia is in Central Africa. I think she has also visited. Some people think Zambia is actually in Central Africa. So she has also decided to visit those places and to see how things can be done. And let's see, Ghana is, as I was saying, is now facing 50% of its economy, or the economy, 50%. Inflation has taken place on 50% anyway. 50% inflation is now in Ghana. And let's see, the USA, what normally wanted, like in some part of last year, the USA had wanted to tell Africa who they should befriend. That was why you have seen and heard people like Cyril Ramaphosa, who said that the USA is a friend like Russia and China. And the United States does not have that audacity or the moral obligation or the mandate or the temerity or that infantry to tell Africa who they should befriend. Africa has the moral obligation, the volition, the willpower to befriend anybody. They have the right to associate and disassociate themselves with any continent, irrespective of the world power. So it is not the responsibility of the United States to dictate to Africa who to befriend and why they should befriend. So I think it has actually been very careful on that. But similarly, Africa should also take notice that each time there is an IMF bailout fund, they come with stringent maybe bail conditions or solutions to those problems. They should be very careful on how to tie up this deal, or else they will end up crippling the very economy they think and feel that they are coming to solve. So it's very scrupulous things, and they should be very, very careful on how to handle these things. But another thing is that these are the skepticism about these two visits. Like in the United States, what they normally do, they will involve into both our economy and in the decisions that Africa makes, especially in terms of our governance system. Like the like of Russia, they don't care. China doesn't care. What they need is a transaction. They do not even want to know if you are being ruled by a tyrant, a despotic leader, a totalitarian or authoritarian. They do not even think whether, look like what down there already now with the like of Mali, the like of Burkina Faso, and they have strong transaction with Guinea. Even though those countries are being ruled by khaki boys, they do not think about any democratic principle, because China is a communist state, Russia is a socialist state, and they believe in those kind of totalitarian and authoritarian mentality. So that is why in the United States now, when they come, they will both interfere into your economy, into your political power, whatsoever thing. So we are also seeing those things. Maybe African leaders who are friendly with the throne, who do not want to get the throne, may end up to be very friendly with the like of Russia and China, because they do not favor democratic principle and they do not think and feel that democracy should exist on the continent. They may tend to do such thing. So we should be very careful. I think Africa is facing a wave of civilized invasion in this 21st century, because the coming of Russia, China, and the USA back on the continent in the form of struggle, wanting to win over African leaders, will create a situation where they may end up to dictate what the country does. So that was for Kamala Harris visiting to Africa. We should be very careful. Let's see Emmanuel Macron's visit on the continent. We all know Macron under France, or France under Macron. For far too long, France have been blamed, especially for the Francophone speaking West Africa. She has facilitated a lot of change in governance, especially when you fell out, or any government that may have fallen out or fell out or intends to fall out with the existing dictatorial regime. I can tell on Africa, maybe in France they think that they are democratic, but when it comes to the continent, we look at them so dictatorial. So we have seen that since they are coming into places like since it existed with Guinea, it existed with Burkina Faso, La Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, then places like Niger, then of course Mali. It has fallen out. Even DRC Congo, calls have been made, right? The Democratic Republic of Congo, calls have been made by people like Felix Kisangeti government, for them to call it popular demonstration against the very existence of the French trade. So what Macron is now intending to do, he wants to minimize France's involvement into African politics. Maybe even like the currency. Most of those African, French-speaking West African, their save is normally based in France. And most of those corrupt leaders, when they corrupt, where do they go? They go with those money in Paris and other places in France to ensure that they corrupt. So what Emmanuel Macron is now doing? Okay, France now will have little or no saying on your political affairs. Even in the military, he's willing that, okay, let us have a collaborative military where we empower your troops to be trained, or your army to be trained how to defend themselves, rather than we come into control situation. So a lot of demonstrations have been made against them, and they are carefully withdrawing the French troops from the continent, maybe to be replaced by Russia. Especially Russia now is being fed into Burkina Faso, Russia is being fed into Guinea, Russia is being fed into Mali. But militarily, they are fed into both Mali and Burkina Faso, unlike Guinea. But economically and whatsoever, those things have been there. But I think maybe they should be clandestinely existing into Guinea. So Emmanuel Macron want to have a very clean relationship with its former colony, provided that. But look at this. A visit to places like Gabon, where the Bongo regime, Omar Bongo, still decide to continue his campaign for his continued dictatorship. It just seemed like an attempt to still continue the Bongo dynasty. Even it visit to places like, because it visited Brazzaville, Libreville, Luanda, and other places. All these things is a clear picture that it is there to support those old regime, because who knows, a radical regime may take over those countries, and they may not want to see the like of Emmanuel Macron on the continent. But nobody can blame him. Anybody who thinks and feels that Emmanuel Macron visit into Africa or on the continent since he's taken over our power about maybe 6 or 7 years ago have been in poverty. No, he has come into Africa 18 good times, and he promised to come and come and come. So he's coming and coming and coming. We end up to create another problem on the continent of Africa. So he actually wants to ensure that he solidifies those relationships. But visiting those countries that are about to undertake elections is just like a mean to see how they can create a situation so that those regimes can still remain into power. Because we have seen when the regime in Guinea changed, it changed against crime. When the regime in Burkina Faso changed, it changed against crime. When the regime in Mali changed, it changed against crime. So Emmanuel Macron knows very well that if we have another change of regime in other French countries on the continent of Africa, there will be also a change of political philosophy, the way they observe France, and there will be a withdrawal tendency. So he has come. So far so good. That is for the visit of Emmanuel Macron on the continent. Let's come to our last story. USA or Russia invasion of Ukraine still continue to divide Africa. Perfect. Because some African countries are actually in support of the Ukraine invasion, of Ukraine invasion by Russia, while others tend to abstain themselves. That's why sometimes ago, people we actually calling, especially the United States and other top officers, that Africans should change their mentality and condemn Russia invasion on the continent. The like of Sarah Maposa said, no. You cannot tell us what to do and what not to do. It is our own moral obligation to condemn, sustain, neutral, and whatsoever thing. So there is a divided sentiment on the continent. Let's take a common example. Russia supported South Africa against the apartheid regime. The United States against it, but the United States supported the apartheid regime. In fact, how many people knows that? How many people actually know that the like of Nelson Mandela was actually on the United States terrorist list? They blacklisted them. In fact, the ANC, the African National Congress, was also blacklisted as a terrorist organization. It was only in 2008 when Nelson Mandela was being removed from American Wanted list. While the United States was supporting the apartheid regime, Russia decided to support South Africa against the minority rule. So, morally, do you expect Russia to be opposed by Africa, especially like South Africa, when she invaded Ukraine, and all other people, especially the top powers, are against her invasion? No. So that is why we are seeing it's a very sensitive issue. And then also in some other African countries, let's see again the mentality of neutrality in what other African country decides to do would also help a lot to shape the continent mentality. Like the like of where you have like Yoweri Museveni, you have like Paul Biya, you have like Denis Ingweso, you have Obiangwema, that is in Equatorial Guinea. Ingweso is Congo, Brazzaville. Then you think Paul Kagame in Rwanda. You think about Paul Biya, who is in Cameroon. Then you think Yoweri Museveni, who is actually in Uganda. Do you expect them, even like the current military regime in Sudan? Then you watch at the like of South Bakia, Ria Machar. Then you also watch like Mali. You think about Guinea. Then you think about Burkina Faso. The prevailing circumstances over there will always make them to support Russia and China, because Russia and China do not care about the type of military or regime or the type of governance system that they are going. The most important thing is their selfish interest, their unscrupulous way of doing things. Let them have their natural resources. Let them continue the collaboration with the government. They do not care what type of governance system that you are under. But the United States comes, what it normally does, like it invades both the economy and the political decisions of the country. So, any democratic country will tend to support the United States. Any undemocratic country tend to go by Russia and China. So we are going to see a divided mentality, and some countries will still continue to stand. Of course, South Africa, we can understand her past collaboration, all of those things. It is evil, and everybody knows that Africa will continue to face series of crises each time there is a global problem. Thank you. It's been me, Edward Amara, with top news headline: Kamala Harris visit to Africa. Can her visit actually woo or the whole continent from the invasion of both Russia and China? The Macron visit on the continent to counter Russia invasion. Then above all, we have just listened to an analysis of how Russia invasion of Ukraine continue to divide Africa, and those things actually come in what Russia mentality, the Russian mentality, the Chinese mentality, and the United States mentality. And when Antonio Blinken visited the continent, what he did, Blinken visit was for security. Kamala Harris now visit is both for economy and peaceful transition of power. We continue to see, and the United States is set to hold USA African Summit in December, and Kamala Harris' visit is also seen as a means to prepare the ground for Joe Biden's visit. Thank you very much. It's been me once more, Edward Amara, full of focus on Liberia, West African correspondent based in Kenema City, Sierra Leone, West Africa.